volume. Stand by. Five, four, three, two, one. Welcome to the RPG After Years, your weekly show covering all things RPGs from the past, present, and future. This is episode 108. I'm Scott.
And I'm Rich.
And coming up on today's episode, we're going to do our damnedest to finally finish our review of the latest RPG Club game. It's Squaresoft's 1995 time-traveling SNES JRPG classic.
It's Chrono Trigger.
I love that track. That's probably my favorite track on the soundtrack.
Sounds all
I
mystical.
was thinking, I was thinking the other day, Shala, the character, that's her theme. She's really only in like a handful of scenes. I mean, yeah, she's important to the story, but like, I feel like I care about her much more than I should just because of her theme. So,
It's,
anyway,
music gets you.
yeah. Since this is a review episode, we're not going to be doing all of our normal segments. No news, no Patreon talk, no Bill's tea time, no catch up, just some straight up review goodness. But before we hit that up, here are some quick show updates. Rich, where are we at with the RPG Club?
Well, right now we're in the voting stage, but by the time this episode releases, we should have the new game for the RPG Club. So, just so you know what the RPG Club is a game where our Patreons vote or nominate a game of their choice to be played on the RPG Club. Then, as a group, we vote on that. And here soon, we should know what our new game is going to be. We'll play that in sections. So, like I said, the current game is nothing. We don't have a checkpoint, and we have no due date. So,
Right. So, because of Easter Sunday, Rich and I are actually recording this episode over a week in advance. So, for us, voting is about to begin in just a couple of hours. But by the time you guys are listening to this publicly, voting will have concluded. And so, I'm going to have to edit in me announcing what the next game is. So, without further ado, take it away, Editor Scott. Okay, we've time traveled back to the past, and you guys now know what the game is. So, are you excited to play whatever game that is, Rich?
I'm super excited. I can't wait to not finish checkpoints. I'm just kidding. I'm going to finish checkpoints. I swear to God. I'm excited.
The nominations are pretty strong this time,
Yeah.
so there's only a couple games I would be a little disappointed to
Yeah.
if they won. But anyway, so moving on, the Materia Lockdown, that's still going on. It's our annual Final Fantasy VII charity challenge where we have a Twitter bot that assigns your Final Fantasy VII characters what materia colors they're allowed to use, which puts in like a pseudo job class system into Final Fantasy VII. It's fun. Bill told me Friday that they've already reached over half of their goal, so that's really cool. It's
Nice.
all for the Motor Neuron Disease Association, something close to Bill's heart. So there's also a Nuzlocke this time system that he's implemented if you want to make it even more challenging. So we'd be happy if you guys would check that out and play along. That's still going. It'll end June 23rd, so you still got plenty of time if you want to get in on it.
Yes.
Moving on.
So we're going to talk about the RPGs that are releasing the last week. So what has happened is the Iron Oath, which is PC, April 19th, entering early access. Neptunia X Senran
Kagra?
Kagra Ninja Wars on the Switch, April 19th, North America, and April 22nd in Europe. Chernobylite, PS5, Xbox Series S and X, April 21st. Is that I wonder if that's a horror game. Anacard, which is Switch, Xbox Series X, PC in April 21st. Sure.
Nice. And by the way, I should have said if you want more info about the Materia Lockdown, that's at materialockdown.com. So the RPGs that are coming out this coming week, we got King Arthur Knight's Tale exiting early access on the PC. That's on April 26th. And on the 27th, Holomento on PC is entering early access. And that's all you need to know. By the way, we are aware that there have been some big news items like the PS Plus tiers and Kingdom Hearts 4 being announced. Look forward to us talking about that in a couple weeks' time. It's a review up. So, with all that out of the way, let's don our wings of time and fly back into the review. Okay, so we're starting today by covering the second half of the story. Later in the episode, we'll go into gameplay and then end the episode with our final ratings for the game, as well as all your feedback, listeners. So where we left off, Bill and I got to roughly the halfway point of the story. Our characters had just gone into Magus's castle and defeated him, prevented him from summoning Lavos, but we learned that he wasn't actually trying to create Lavos, but we didn't get to learn what he was actually trying to do yet. And then they all got sucked into a time portal, and our heroes landed in 65 million BC. So we're going to let Rich take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So after the great fight of Magnus, where you find out that you probably shouldn't have done that, you wake up in 65 million BC in the hut of Ayla's place. So you're basically finding out that the village has been burned down by the reptiles because of what happened with the gate key. So you then learn you have to go find out more about Lavos, and the original origin of the name is where you find that out towards the end of this section. But you have to fight through the lair, trying to redeem yourself basically with the people, because you did cause the problem. You did mess them up a little bit. So was it Kano? Is her boyfriend?
Kino.
Kino.
Yeah.
Kino's her boyfriend and some of the people got kidnapped and taken away. So this actually gets to a nice little animated scene of you flying with the pterodactyls. But isn't there some weird little thing that it only shows you and Chrono?
The way it's animated, you don't see who's on that third dactyl. So,
yeah, that would be kind of hard to do that.
By the way, just throwing this out here real quick, I just recently played this part of the game again because I'm trying to go through and get the alternate endings. I noticed in the scene right before you take off on the dactyls, you can actually see a red star in the background in the skybox. It's in the anime cutscene too, and you and I know what that red star is. So I thought that was cool. I was like, why didn't I notice that the first time?
Yeah, I'll have to look at that again. So you fight through the Azala's lair, and you basically have to get through everything. You fight Nizbal number 2. I think it's a reskin of another Nizbal that's you fought in 65 million BC the first time.
He's a very jacked dinosaur looking critter.
Yeah, he obviously hits the weights.
Yeah.
And the steroids.
Can't you talk to him and then you run past him and he's like, wait, did you think I was just standing here flexing for nothing?
Yeah, basically. You can go past him. It's pretty funny. He stops you. So once you have to release, you find Kino, you find all the other people that have been kidnapped, and you let them go. Now you make your way up through the lair to face off against King Azala, and then you also find his big black Tyranno, which is kind of funny. That boss fight was actually pretty easy, in my opinion, once you figure it out how to do it. So,
We were supposed to take out Izala first,
mhm.
but her defense is really high. So that tricked me the first time I did the boss battle because I was like, okay, her defense is really high. Maybe I'm not supposed to target her first, but no, you are supposed to.
Mm-hmm. So you target her first, you get him out, and then you take out Tyranno. So once you do that, you notice something. What's
Right.
that coming
So
down?
the red star that I just mentioned is actually some kind of meteor hurtling towards them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you learn that basically this is Lavos, and this is where Lavos first crashed into the planet and roosted itself deep within its crust. It was basically a meteor that wiped out the reptites.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Azala gets like a small redemption here. She says, "Take revenge for us" or something.
I
Ayla
guess.
tries to save Azala, but she doesn't really want to be rescued.
Yep. And then you
And
also
then you
find out the wording of Lavos, which means lav, which is, I can't remember the definition. Big fire.
La meaning fire and Vos meaning big. So big fire,
Yep.
which is
That's
cool.
it. So
Especially
you
since
leave.
Ayla was the one that created the name, I guess.
You find the inventor of the name. So
Right.
once you're done with that, you hop on the pterodactyls, you take off, and you see the big scene where that meteor crashes in and ends up taking out all the reptiles. And that is basically it for that part of the story.
Yep. So do you remember how you end up in 12,000 BC? Because that's the next part.
I honestly don't remember how I got there. I think I
Me
just
either.
um you take everybody back to the kingdom, and or not the kingdom, you take everybody back to the actual like village, and you land the pterodactyls. You go in, you talk to the chief, you talk to Kino, and basically saying that they need to find. They know now where Lavos comes from.
Right.
Now they need to figure out a
Okay.
way to defeat them.
All right. Well, somehow, I think the where I left off in my second playthrough was right before fighting Nizbal too. So I am not fresh on this part, unfortunately. But
Oh
somehow,
wait. Oh, now I remember. Now I do remember.
okay.
So when the crash happens, it creates another time vortex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you end up in the year 12,000 BC, which at first glance appears to be like kind of a desolate, snowy wasteland world. However, you can find this teleporter that takes you up into the sky, into this floating chain of continents, and it's called the Kingdom of Zeal. And of course, it's beautiful. This area of the game is really awesome looking. It's got some cool music. A lot of people really love this part of the game. But you go through several of the cities in this kingdom, and you basically learn that the people that live up here apparently created magic, and they all have magic powers. And then there's the race that lives on the surface world are the people that don't have magic, and they're just kind of like looked down upon. So you also learn that apparently the queen of this kingdom, Queen Zeal, is building an ocean palace, and you eventually come to learn that they are using some kind of machine to harvest energy from Lavos. So obviously that's no bueno. Um, yeah, you meet this little kid who's kind of a little brat. His name's Janice, and then you also meet the princess of the kingdom, Shala. So you learn basically, eventually, you learn that this little brat Janice is the youngest son of the queen, and you just kind of like explore the kingdom, and you eventually get to Zeal Palace, and you meet up with Shala and all them, and Shala doesn't want to power up. I think Shala has figured out that the Lavos is bad news bears, and she doesn't want to like contribute any more to drawing energy from it. But she's like the most magical girl in the kingdom, and is the only one capable of actually powering up the machine that draws energy. It's called the Mammon machine.
Gene.
Uh, yeah. Oh, and you also learn that apparently Queen Zil used to be like a kind, benevolent ruler, but after they started drawing energy from Lavos, which is what originally gave everybody magic powers, that she became like kind of a wicked, like greedy, power hungry ruler.
I'm not sure how they found out about Lavos though.
That's a good question. Oh, because I'm leaving out one part. There's also apparently the one who first told them about Lavos is this false prophet. He's like just this mysterious hooded figure that is just telling Queen Zeal what to do and all that. And we'll learn more about him later. But you storm the palace. Queen Zeal's like, get the fuck out. You also meet Dalton, who is like her head enforcer guy. He's a jerk. You have to fight a golem here, which in this part of the game, you end up fighting many golems. It kind of gets old.
Yep.
Um, but even though you defeat the golem, they have you thrown out and you're ejected from the kingdom. I think there's a scene here where Shala also powers up your pendant, Marl's pendant, to where you can finally open the sealed chests
No,
across time.
you actually take your pendant to the mammoth machine. Well, not the mammoth machine. There's a machine that they have like in the side room of before you have to go into the chamber, the audience chamber for the queen. You
Right.
actually then power up your pendant, which is the same pendant in a sense that Shallow's wearing. So that's how you see that,
Hmm.
and that's how you can
Yeah.
now go back.
Isn't it? Am I misremembering? But isn't it also this scene where Shala refuses to power up the Mammon machine further, but the queen threatens to like have Chrono and all them killed?
I think so. I think that's basically she starts protesting that
Right.
she's like, "This is a bad idea. I think we're gonna wake up Lavos and we're all gonna die
Yep.
and everything."
And the reason they're building this ocean palace is so they'll be even closer to Lavos and be able to draw even more energy. So it's going to be bad if all this comes to pass.
Yeah.
So you go back to the future, and I cannot remember why.
You actually get kicked out. So you got kicked out, and you have to. This is you have to go find one of the other timekeepers of
Oh, the three
something.
gurus of time, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
because you think that they can give you like the advice or like the powers you need
How to get
to
back
get to
to.
the. Yeah. Okay. So there's three gurus who are also against Queen Zeal. Um, so the first one that you want to go after, you think is in the future, and this one is Balthazar. And apparently, Balthazar created a lot of the technology that you see in the future, and he's transplanted his mind into a new, which is one of those weird blue creatures. So you find him. He gives you what you need to get back to the Kingdom of Zeal, and he basically asks for you to kill him because he's like served his purpose and all that. Um, I think you get the choice of whether or not to do it, right?
I think so. You get the choice to do that, but then once you get it, um, yeah, you could turn them off, or you don't have to. I just
Yeah.
remember correctly. Yeah.
So after this, you go back to 12,000 BC, and your goal is to, um, well, we also skipped a part where you meet up with like the surface people who are non-magical and kind of desolate. You meet their elder. I think that's how you find out you need to find the gurus. As Shala comes to visit you down there, and she tells you,
Mhm.
find the gurus. So the next guru is in this current timeline of 12,000 BC, and you need to go to Mount Woe. And so you climb this dungeon. It's like a floating mountain that's chained to the ground. It's kind of hard to navigate. And so at the top, you fight Giga Gaia, which is a really badass looking monster. And it's not really that hard of a boss fight, though, despite how badass he looks. Uh, Bill in chat says, "Hi, now you're on the good parts of the story. Gave me all that crap to talk about." Well, this is probably the best part of the game story wise, all the Zeal stuff.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah. So at the top, after you defeat Giga Gaia, you learn that the next guru, I think the Guru of Reason, is Melchior, our blacksmith buddy from the present.
Ooh.
So apparently the gurus are immortal or some shit.
We don't know that
um,
quite yet. You just was like, why are they all over the place?
yeah, kind of some kind of paradox stuff. And yeah, so I think after this, you've got one more guru to find, I believe. You go back to 12,000 BC. Or no, you did. We already found the third guru. We learned that that's Gaspar, right at the end of time.
Yep, he's been there the whole time. So he kind of gives you an idea of, well, you actually, once you find Melchior, you go back to the palace, the Ocean Palace, and Melchior and the other gurus are there. This has nothing's happened yet. So the gurus are there. Um, they actually fire up the mammoth machine.
Right.
So as you're trying to get through everything, the Ocean Palace, Dalton summons his two little golems again. They're not little, they're big. You make your way through. You go fight. You try to fight the queen again, the mammoth machine, but it's too late. This is a tragic,
By the way, the Gollum
tragic issue.
twins were apparently the hardest boss in the game for Bill. He was telling me he died like 12 times to them. Did you die
uh,
at all?
I did not. I did not
Okay.
die at all. Well, because there's a certain way, if you fight the first time you fight the golem, if you do certain things to that one, it affects the fight with the two golems here. So I can't remember which one I did that made it easier. If I remember the guide. So once you get through there, you get to the throne room when the man machine's turned on. Shala is powering it up because she's being forced to, and Lava shows up. And
Right.
then we get some
So you,
crazy animation scenes.
yeah, you end up in the like some kind of weird time vortex. Queen Zeal is there, Lavos is there, Dalton's there, Shala's there, Janice is there. So at this point, you learn that Janice is actually Magus as a child. What a twist! And that the
Yeah.
false prophet is the Magus that we know.
Yeah, they got thrown back in time earlier. So he
Right.
used his knowledge of what happened in the past to gain the trust to become the prophet, to get close to the queen, to get her to do all these things, to get him closer to Lavos. And then he
So
was
I
going to
think,
kill Lavos.
yeah, I think Magus's idea was that they if he tried to fight Lavos as soon as it was summoned originally, that he would be able to kill it
Yep.
and
Save his
prevent.
sister.
Right. So basically, Lavos absorbs Shala because she's like attached to it now. It's following Queen Zeal's every command. Somehow she has control of Lavos, and then you kind of get your ass whooped,
Oh,
and
yeah, you do.
um, and then Chrono ends up standing up to Lavos to try and save Shala. But what happens?
Well, let's see. There's this thing that Lavos does apparently that only this he could do this time.
Yeah,
He does a fire breath time thingy and just obliterates Kronos. Chrono basically just disintegrates. So he thinks his tiny sword is going to block the blast, in true RPG fashion.
right.
Um, and yeah, he just dies,
Womp
straight up
womp.
dead. You get basically, if I can't remember correctly, is you get thrown out of the palace. Uh, Lavos gets really pissed off that you woke him up, and he destroys the kingdom of Zeal. He basically blasts everything up. He destroys everything. I think you take control of Marl. You're basically now having a realization that Chrono is dead, and sad times, and everybody has fallen. There is no kingdom, no class separations. There's just everybody mixed together. The people with no magic is accepting the people with magic to try to help them survive a little bit. Um, you go talk to the elder of the non-magical people in this big open field, and then all of a sudden Dalton shows up because he's a dick and thinks that he's the new king.
He thinks Queen
And
Zil is dead and like
yeah,
he's in charge now.
correct. So he then takes you aboard the Blackbird. So it depends on who you take up there. You have to find your equipment. If you can't find your equipment, if you have Ayla with you, you don't need equipment. You just bash your way through and find everything. I didn't have Ayla. I had Frog, Luca, and Marl for that.
Sad. I had Ayla. It made things
Yeah,
easy.
yeah, it did. So you go through everything there. You end up getting outside of the Blackbird for some reason. Don't know why. You fight the Golem, and then Marl gets really pissed off at Dalton for firing upon him. So she jumps and attacks the Epoch that they're on because he took it and put wings on it.
Right.
So he thinks it's his new
And the
mobile
Golem this
throne.
time is like a joke boss, right?
Yeah, it's a joke boss. So you kill the Golem on the wing of the Blackbird, and then you jump onto the Epoch. And what happens is Dalton tries to summon it because he thinks he's a badass, and the golem doesn't show up. So they kick him through
Right.
that portal,
Yeah.
and
And
he's done.
yep, that's the last time
So
you see Dalton.
yeah, no more. Thank God. Once you take control of that, the Blackbird crashes. You have the Epoch. Um, now you have an option. You can go find Magus, who is off on a cliff somewhere. You don't. Do you get notification on where he's at? I just happen to just remember where he was.
He's just nearby, and I don't think it actually lets you leave until you go and at least talk to him.
Okay. So you have two choices. You either fight him or you don't. But Frog, it's the choice of Frog. So this is, I think, where you will come into play for how you do this for your endings.
Right. So you can fight him and defeat him, or you can let him join the party. And all it really affects is whether you get Megas as a party member and whether or not any of his stuff is in the ending. So
I do remember, though, he's supposed to be a pretty hard boss.
that's what I think Frost said that. Like he tried to fight Megas first just to see how that affected things, and he said it was a hard fight.
Yeah. So I imagine if you do New Game Plus, it won't be as bad.
Yeah. Not
So
at all. Nothing's bad in New Game Plus.
you pretty overpowered.
Oh yeah, I can beat bosses in like a couple turns now.
Nice.
The only thing that was hard about New Game Plus was the first couple of Lavos fights because you have to you only have Chrono and Marl at that point. So
Oh,
and
okay.
it's still early in the game, so you haven't like kept leveling up and become super OP. So
Oh, okay. So once you grab Magus and you go to the end of time, you talk to this that hooded figure. You know who the hooded figure is, Scott? That's one
it's
of the
the
the uh,
gurus, right?
the gurus,
Yeah.
Gaspar. So Gaspar gives you a bunch of hints. This is where also he talks about various side quest hints. Talks about Luca's, Ayla's, Frogs, all their side quests. But also then it tells you that you can get Chrono back, called the Time
Right.
Egg or the Chrono Trigger. They actually said it.
Right. Yeah. So you get that at Death Peak, right?
Yeah, once you get the Time Egg and everything, you have to actually swap out a moment in time, with um, the exact thing that Chrono is. So this, if you have the Chrono doll that you get from like that side quest, or no, the side that
The Tent of Horrors at the
Tent of
fair.
Horrors. Yeah, you like a little bonus game, mini game. I never did that until this point, and I hated it. It was a
It wasn't that.
bitch to
It's
do.
not that bad. Yeah. Is it the copycat
Copy.
Simon Says
Yeah,
you have to do?
yeah,
Yeah, that can be tricky.
yeah. It was a little tricky. So once you have that, you then can go to Death Peak, and that is where Marl has this faded little, monologue, and nothing's happening. She gets all upset, and then all of a sudden, boom, magic happens. You then get transported to the moment where Chrono dies. Swap out Chrono with the doll, basically. So you just sacrifice another thing. Now, is that doll alive?
I guess it's just like a perfect replica of Chrono, so that's why it was easy or possible to switch him out with the real one.
So you just murdered another Chrono,
Yeah.
basically. Okay. So when you murder the Chrono clone 2, um, you get back to Death Peak and you have Chrono, and he wakes up. He's like, "What the hell just happened?"
Yep.
You explain
And
that he died, but you saved him.
right. But yeah, so that's basically the last like story thing before you move on to like the final dungeon and all that. Frost in the chat says you can fight Magus solo with Frog or with a full party without Frog if you don't have Frog. Okay. Did you do it with just Frog? And does it change anything other than the fight? Okay, so we covered all these side quests in the RPG Club segment a few episodes back. Let me see if I can figure out which one that was. I guess it would have been episode 104, probably
I think so.
104 or 105. So we're not gonna like cover it in as much detail as we did then. I'm gonna just kind of rapid fire through these. In Luca's side quest, basically you have to power up a moonstone into a sunstone, which helps her make her ultimate weapon. There's also a piece here where you can get some beef jerky and give to the greedy mayor's ancestor, to make him not become greedy in the future. He's like a philanthropist.
Yes.
uh, so you get the sense, so that's a nice little wrap up on that plot. In Frog's side quest, you basically hire some carpenters to fix up some old ruins. You get some closure with Cyrus. I think there's a scene here that wraps up him and Cyrus's plot nicely, and it powers up the Masamune
Yep.
even further.
I did this one. I had to go back
Yes.
after a little bit and do some of these side quests.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
I'll name the ones that I've done for you.
Okay.
So I did that one. Now, Magus' side quest basically is you go back to the old hideout that they used to have, and you find out that it's still up and running. You fight Ozzy through everything, but you first fight Flea, Slash, then you fight them Ozzy, Slash, and Flea at the same time. Then you can take out Ozzy again, but Ozzy's not defeated by you. You actually get Ozzy gets defeated by a cat, and then
Right.
you find all of Magus's armor and weapons, his ultimate stuff. So you're good there. It's not really hard to get those. Apparently, it's pretty easy. Then what happens is you find the Medea village is now peaceful and friendly to humanity, and that's
Which
it.
there's a nice little touch there.
And they actually give you the cheapest stuff. If I
Yeah,
remember
it's like
correctly.
the best shops in the game after that,
Yep.
whereas before they were by far the most expensive.
Yep. The bastards.
Frost in the chat says whether or not you fight with just Frog just changes the flavor text around the fight. The outcome is the same. Okay.
Gotcha.
So the next side quest is Fiona's side quest. There's this woman in the forest back in the Middle Ages who wants to create a forest. If you give her the plant sapling that you probably got in Zeal, she will do that. But first, you have to go into the desert and slay the monsters there. But even with the sapling, it's going to take a lot of work to replant the forest. So they decide to leave Robo behind to cultivate the land for 400 years. And then you go back to the future. You find Robo's lifeless husk, and Luca fixes him again. This is where you get the famous campfire scene where they discuss the entity, how it's not Lavos that's creating all the time travel shenanigans. It's some kind of entity that wants to fix the past. And they never really bring that up again. So I'm wondering if that comes up in Chrono Cross, honestly.
Don't know
But
yet.
anyway, so there's also a flashback here where Luca is able to travel back in time and prevent her mother from having her legs mangled in some machinery, which is nice. Nice little part for her.
But should she have done that?
I mean, it doesn't seem to affect anything, so
I think it would have. Technically, it should have affected some stuff, but that's okay. We'll get
yeah.
into that.
Next one is Robo's side quest, and so you go back to the Genodome in the future, and you learn that there are more robot clones. You got to go through the dungeon. You meet a pink robot named Atropus XR, who apparently used to be sweet on Robo or something. You defeat her, and then you learn that there was like this AI called the Mother Brain that was controlling all the robots. So you defeat her, and you free the robots from slavery, and that's it for that.
Nice. I did not do that one. So, moral side quest. I did end up doing this one. Basically, what you have to do is you're basically getting all of the super stuff for Chrono, his weapons and whatnot, using the rainbow shell. You go back and learn about the rainbow shell from Toma in the bar. Then what you do is, um, tell the king of Gordia back in the past where it's at. He delivers that back to his the kingdom, and you go back to the present, and you find out that the king is being tried for potentially stealing and selling the rainbow shell because it's a national treasure. Um, you do all that, and then Marl shows up and tries to rescue the king. You find out that it's Yakra 8, no,
13.
Yakra 13, that is from the descendant of the Yakra from the past that you did to save the queen. And you basically have a nice little moment where the king and Marl reconcile, and you find the real chancellor again, who apparently should not have a job because he sucks. I can't see. He just seems to be the one who keeps getting captured.
Yeah.
I imagine this chancellor is a guy that gets tricked by the ladies, or whatever his flavor is, by a
You think
monster that's
Yakura impersonates like hot ladies and then
yeah,
like seduces the Chancellor?
or hot dudes. We don't know what he likes. Um, And he just like, ooh, I'm gonna go over there. Ooh la la. And wait, what is that over there? And boom, he's captured again.
Just stuffed in a chest.
Yeah, it's just a whole line of people that does. It's just terrible. Um, so they try to figure out what to do with it. Melchior shows up and says, I can make equipment with these things. So you have the option to get some headdress, head or chest piece. And then there's another piece that you have to get in order to recreate Chrono's ultimate weapon. And there you go. That's it. That's that side quest.
I do like the little part with Marl bursting through the stained glass window of the courtroom,
Oh, that
and
was
then of
good.
course, yeah, and then of course the reconciliation with the king was nice.
Yeah, good
You can
times.
also do the bonus dungeon added to the DS here, the Lost Sanctum. Don't do it; it's terrible. It will take you all day, and you don't get much out of it. So
Nice.
I hate
Nice.
it. I still haven't done the Dimensional Vortex. I'm still, like I said, got a couple more endings to go. I wish I could talk about that for a minute, but I have no clue what it's about yet.
But by the time you go through that, you should be way overpowered. So you
Yeah,
should make it. It should make it easier for you. So the next part is the Black Omen. This is the actual story part. Well, sort of. Right. You can do the Black Omen, or you
you
can go
can just
straight to
skip it
Lavos.
if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah,
Yeah. So the Black Omen is basically the underground. Is it the underwater castle from
yeah.
that
So it's like
Queen
the ocean
Zeal?
palace that rose into the sky. It after it rises. Yeah, we didn't mention this. It's just like this huge black foreboding spaceship that's in like multiple eras.
Yeah, somehow it just shows up. So you have the choice to run through 3 times in the past, present, and future. If you want it, you don't have to. But this is how you get some pretty good equipment. You show up, you run the dungeon. Um, you got the Mega Mutant, the Giga Mutant, the Terra Mutant, and then you have the lava spawn.
Again,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they don't have any like significance to it. You fight Queen Zeal. Queen Zeal talks about how she's the chosen one, and this is this ridiculous that you're doing these things to her. She's gonna have the ultimate power. You fight Queen Zeal, then you fight the Mammon Machine because that's waking up Lavos. Then you fight Zeal, which what the hell is Zeal? I forget.
I guess because Queen Zeal has absorbed Lavos energy, she can just turn into like a she gets an RPG second form.
Boss swap. Well, what's really cool though is now that when you fight them, you're up in space. You just how tall this Black Omen is.
Yeah, it's cool. You can also steal some great equipment from Zeal, which is the main reason to run the dungeon in multiple eras to get more copies of that stuff.
Yep.
And if you have Megas in the party, he actually like tells Zeal off, and during this phase of the fight, it plays the Megas boss fight music instead of the regular. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because he's pissed off at his mom.
Yeah, I think he says more than like a couple times that you're not my mother or she is no longer my mother, something like that.
Yeah, I get that.
So
I really do.
yeah, she's kind of an evil witch. So
Yes.
Um, so then you finally, once you do that, you can go fight Lavos. During the first phase of the fight, he basically takes on a bunch of the tactics of past bosses throughout the game. So you have to like kind of remember how to defeat those bosses if you want to be able to take out Lavos. Unless you're OP, and then you could probably brute force it.
I doubt
Uh,
it.
right. And then the second phase of the fight is a more traditional, just boss battle against Lavos.
Now, what's really cool about this though is you can take this moment to go back and do side quests and things like that. You have that opportunity because you get to go inside of a shell, which is weird. Um, so
Yeah, it turns out that Lavos was just like what you know as Lavos was like just the shell of like a more powerful being, I
it
guess.
could be a ship. We don't know.
Yeah, we
So
we theorized about that.
yeah. So now you get to wait. This is your section. Why am I talking?
Yeah, shut up.
Sorry.
So yeah, you can go back and do the side quest now if you want. There's a convenient time portal right inside Lavos' shell. You go on and you fight the inside of Lavos, which looks like a weird mixture between Cell and King Cooler from Dragon Ball Z. You can definitely tell Toriyama designed this one. um, and then basically he's got like two arms. You just got to take out the arms and then focus down on the core. I know because I've killed this thing. I had to fight this thing like 9 times now, getting all the endings. um, And then you face this weird looking monster. It's called the Lavos Core. He's got two pods. It almost looks like a weird alien creature. Kind of not very intimidating for a final form, but
Nobody was a bitch to fight.
yeah. So how it works is he's got these two pods, and once you kill the right pod, the battle is over. But the right pod has super high defense unless you kill the left pod or the core, at which point the right pod will begin resurrecting the other parts. And while it's resurrecting, its defense is low. So once you figure that part out, it's easy, but it can be tricky if you're not sure what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the final fight.
Good times.
So, oh yeah, you also learned that apparently Lavos's goal was to absorb the DNA of every living creature on the planet, just to become like some kind of melting pot of all DNA, something like that.
And then wouldn't it leave? I wonder if it would leave.
I wonder that too. Maybe we'll never know.
Hmm.
So you have the scene back in the present where you learn that a lot of the characters that you met along the way, like Kino and Elder Doan from the future, I think one other character, are
Well,
actually,
it's Reno, it's Kino and Ayla that are actually the starting line of the royal family.
which I thought was a really cool twist, honestly. Like I'd forgotten about that until I saw the ending again. Um, so that's cool. Like the royal line appeared throughout time to fix things, kind of. You get some more scenes with the king where Marl and the king reconcile. He hangs up a new bell, Nadia's bell, and you have another fair. Chrono and Marl have fun at the fair with the dancers at night. It's everybody's really happy. And you go back to the time machine and you decide it's time for everybody to go back to their correct timeline. So they have heartfelt, bittersweet goodbyes. Megas says he's going to continue looking for Shala before he leaves, or I think Marl assumes that's what he's doing. And it kind of ends with Chrono, Marl, and Luca being like, okay, we got to close time. We'll miss everybody. And then just then, Chrono's mom appears chasing the cats, and she's fed up with Chrono not taking care of the cats, and she chases the cats right through the time portal, which closes, and then it ends off with Luca being like, "I guess the journey continues," and they hop aboard the Epoch and fly off.
Let that be a lesson for you guys. If you don't take care of your cats, your mom will get stuck through a time portal.
Yep, chasing pussy through time.
That's awesome.
Um, we got to make that
Oh,
joke every time.
yes.
So if you're playing one of the future versions of later versions of the game, you also get an anime ending scene that wraps up some of the characters' stories a little bit better. You learn that Luca apparently was walking down the path one day in the forest and found a baby. So that's a connecting thread to Chrono Cross, I believe.
Just a forest baby.
Yeah, it's fine.
Sure.
Chrono and Marl get married. You see Frog manage to get turned back into a human. So and he looks like a green haired Vegeta, as Frost said earlier. Um, let's see who else. Robo gets to hang out with Atropus. He's got a new sweet thing he's sweet on. You see Magus brooding on a cliff, just looking kind of villainous. And am I forgetting any of the characters? I think that's it. So yeah, and that's how it goes. And then you could choose to play a new game plus and get a bunch of alternate endings.
Which what
And
you were doing.
yep, I've got like three more endings left to get. Most, to be honest, most of them are pretty shit. Like, there's a couple of them that are interesting. Like, there's one where Frog apparently got with Queen Lean, and then so like everybody in the future is part Frog.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, there's one where by defeating Lavos earlier, it means that the Reptites never got killed by Lavos, and so the Reptites actually defeat the humans, and everybody in the future is just like a Reptite version of themselves. So like you get Reptite Chrono's mom and Reptite Chrono. It's kind of interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. um, I'm trying to think if there's any other memorable ones, but I'm not thinking of any. So I know there's a couple that are just like barely an ending. Like you just watch some monsters play around during the credits. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But yeah, so that's the story of Chrono Trigger. What'd you think, Rich?
Well, it's a good RPG. It's a good story. I could see a lot of the um, things that have influenced in the future of games because of Chrono Cross or Chrono Trigger. So yeah, I don't mind it. It's a good game. I'm glad we did it.
I like the story. It's not. There's parts of it that are a little slow. I think some of the pacing is off at a couple points during the game, but overall the characters are really memorable. There's plenty of twists in there. Yeah, it's got a lot of JRPG cliches in there, but it never really feels too cliche.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't say Chrono Trigger's story is better than most Final Fantasies, but
No. No.
yeah,
No.
it's
No.
definitely it was enjoyable enough, and I like that it's kind of a mixture of serious apocalypse shit, but also lightheartedness at points. So,
Yeah, I agree.
all right, so that's the story. We'll give our ratings on that at the end of the episode. But for now, you ready to talk about the gameplay?
Sure.
All right. I don't think we have too much to say about the gameplay this time because the things that are unique about Chrono Trigger, Chrono Trigger's gameplay can probably be discussed pretty quickly. But yeah,
Yep.
we'll start with the non-gameplay or non-combat. It works pretty standardly. Navigating the world, you run around towns, villages, dungeons, solving puzzles, talking to people. Um, we kind of mentioned during the development episode that one unique thing is when you talk to people, you can run around um, while they're talking, which doesn't really affect anything, but I guess it's unique.
And you can do that in Chrono Cross.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yep.
know that it. Nice. Um, Another cool thing is when you're on the world, there are no random battles. So when you're on the world map, you don't get into battles, and we'll talk more about that aspect when we get to the combat. But the world map, you just kind of like navigate your little sprite around. You can choose villages and towns. Not really. If you played a JRPG, most of this is going to be familiar to you.
It's pretty simple,
Yeah.
basically.
The towns, there's a selection of towns. They usually consist of like a couple residences, a shop, an inn, a tavern. Um, that's really it. Pretty standard. The one unique thing is the different buildings in the towns are like separate locations on the world map. So that's kind of different. Shopping's pretty standard. Nothing really to say about that. So one cool thing about this game, which apparently was one of the most challenging things for them to program, is so you see the enemies on the overworld usually. There's no separate battle screen. So when you get close enough to an enemy or trigger an encounter, you see the enemies like run up to you and appear, and then initiates where you're standing. And it's a cool system that hadn't really been done, to my knowledge, much before this, if at all. And a lot of games don't really do, even today. Like, not a lot of games have done this system, I don't think, which is unfortunate because it's pretty cool.
I think it's a hybrid deal of the Tales games do that,
Yeah,
but it goes into a separate battle scene.
right. And same with like FF13. Like, yeah, the encounters are on the field, but when you touch the enemy, it goes to a separate battle screen, kind of,
Correct.
or mode, or whatever you want to call it. So that's one of the coolest things about this game's gameplay, I would say. I've got a list of dungeons here. Is there any you want to call out as being particularly memorable or ones that challenged you?
Not really. I mean, most of them are pretty simple. They're really linear. Um, you don't have to do too much. I did like the Magus Castle. I like the design of
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, that one's really cool. It's got like this Castlevania, almost horror-ish vibe. You have to fight like the beginning of it. It's got a lot of creepy shit going on, like human characters that are just being creepy, doppelgangers of your characters' loved ones that are just monsters at the end.
Yep,
And then you got Ozzy's uh, series of traps that he bumbles through.
it's just terrible.
Yeah, I liked. I thought the Tyranno lair was also cool. The Ocean Palace I liked. The Blackbird had that unique thing where you had to run around and get your equipment back and be stealthy if you
Oh
so
yeah,
choose. Um, I didn't like Mount Woe. That one was confusing and I could barely see what was going on there. Um, I guess that's really it. I didn't like the future dungeons very much just because they're kind of bleak and I don't know.
I think that's the point though.
Yeah, it is. um, yeah, I would say the dungeons aren't stellar. There's not a whole lot of puzzles going on in them, but there's nothing really wrong with them either.
No,
You got the end of time, which is sort of like your hub. You can use this to travel to different timelines. You can use it to travel to fight Megas early if you so choose. Or, sorry, Lavos. You can also access your ship here. There's Specchio, who grants you magic. It's like a fun side boss you can do to test your skills. I like the end of time. I thought it was a good system for having a hub and an RPG. You get the epoch, which at first you can only use to travel between eras, and but later in the game, in my opinion, a little too late in the game, it gets its wings, as
yep,
we
because of
discussed.
Dalton.
Yep, and so you can actually use it as an airship at that point, and it makes. I guess it becomes available right as all the side quests open up, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
One thing that was a cool idea that I didn't like was the sealed chests. So you see them for like the first half of the game and onward, and you can't open them. And then once you do have the ability, the idea is to open it in the future first and then go back to the past, where the chest will still be there if you opened it in the future first, except for it'll have a powered up item in it. Cool idea, but it's just annoying to remember where they were first off, and then second off to have to go to that spot twice. I don't know.
That's why you need a guide.
Yeah, I definitely used a guide to find all those. Um, so we got some mini games. I really can only think of the fair, the stuff at the fair, and then I guess there's the Johnny mini game, which is like a F Zero Mode 7 bike mini game. What do you think of that one?
I didn't do them.
Well, you had to do the Johnny one once, right?
Oh, the Johnny. Yeah, I had to do that. It was fine. Once you figure, I guess I forgot about that. That's how memorable it was. So as long as you stay out in front of him and never get hit, and kind of you figure out the pattern of the wave, you're
Yeah.
fine. And then when you get towards the end, just boost the crap out of it, and you're fine. And I
You
won every time.
you can do like a time trial mode with him and get rewards based on that, but it's not the rewards aren't great and it's actually pretty difficult to like break records. So as far as the fair goes, it's mostly forgettable. You can bet on races. You can mash A as fast as you can to guzzle soda. You can fight Gato for points. There's like a strength mini game, which is just timing. And then, of course, there's the Tenta Horrors, which you have to do at least once to revive Chrono.
Yep.
There's It's got like a mix and match mini game and like a tower defense mini game. Not very memorable. I feel like I'm forgetting. There's got to be more mini games outside of the fair and Johnny, but
I feel
maybe
like
I'm
you're
not.
not. No, I don't think you. I don't think you are.
Okay. There's the extra dungeons. I already mentioned how the Lost Sanctum is terrible. It's like a 5 hour fetch quest. So, and then I haven't done the Dimensional Vortex yet, so I can't talk about that. And then of course there's you can do a new game plus, like we discussed. Carries over everything, I believe, except for your money and certain story items like the Masamune. Um, and you can get, I think it's like 13 alternate endings, maybe 12.
Hmm.
Some of them are better than others. Like I said, I I kind of wished if when they went through the trouble to implement the alternate endings, if they were going to do it, that it would be there would be more to them than there really is. But can't change it now. And that's about all I could come up with for outside of combat. But I figured I'd let you talk about the actual battle system, Rich.
Yeah, the fun stuff, the actual stuff that matters.
Yeah.
So this is the active time battle 2.0. Like we talked about, it is once you get to a monster, it's not a separate screen. It is a enemy show up, you fight them. There you go. Now they move around with you. So you got magic. Now there are certain characters that can use magic. There's some that cannot. Like Robo and Ayla cannot use magic. You want to know why
Right.
that is? Because robots can't use magic, and Ayla was born before the time of magic. So there you go. Who was it? Was it the? I'm trying to figure out what the little guy that did that. Was it at the end of
Specchio.
time? Specchio is the one that gets you the magic, so you have to do those. Now, the way to increase your talents, your techs, which are the actual skills in a sense, if you think about it from an RPG standpoint, each of them have different terminology for it. These are called techs. What's really cool about this is you can actually combine magic and techs together between characters and develop what's called a dual or triple techs. Dual techs obviously mean that you've got two characters using it, or triple techs, which is all of them. There are some really cool dual and triple techs. Would you use the most of, Scott?
Honestly, I got to the point to where I figured out that you could do more DPS just having the characters use their single text.
Mhm. Yep.
um, but before I figured that out, I used a lot of the triple strikes between Chrono Frog and Ayla or Marl or whoever it was, and I really liked the two elemental dual techs that you could do with Chrono and Frog. So like Lightning Rod, where you stick the Chrono sticks his sword, or Frog sticks his sword in the enemy, and then Chrono strikes it with lightning. That one was cool.
Yeah.
What about you?
I use a lot of that stuff too. And I figured it out as well. But if you want to clear enemies out quickly, the triple techs are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean
As long as they are all enemies hits.
yeah, and the enemy's pretty or the game's pretty forgiving with MP as well. Like you
Mhm.
always have MP items that you need if you need to, typically.
Yeah. Now, what's really cool is with Moral, I put an item on her where the MP usage was like 25%.
Yeah,
So I didn't.
unlimited healing.
Yep, basically. Um, the triple techs, you can unlock those ultimate, I guess, skills through different parts of the mini or the side quests. I
Yeah,
didn't use very many of them, to be honest. I don't even remember if I used them. I
there's some you
used
get naturally, but there are a bunch that are locked to a specific accessory that you have to equip. Especially Magus. I don't think Magus gets any triple text without accessories.
no. I used Lumeria a lot
Yeah,
from
it's
Chrono. That's the
it's
best
basically
one.
Chrono's version of Ultima. So
Yep, and it works out phenomenal.
yeah,
So enemy changing positions, I talked about that a little bit, is where they move around the screen as you're doing those things. And boss techniques, they're just the skills basically.
yeah. So you have certain AoE abilities that, depending on the enemy's positioning, it determines on whether or not it will hit those enemies.
Yeah.
So you got like some that are like hit enemies in a circle, or uh, cut a
Straight
straight line
lines.
through
Yeah.
enemies, stuff like that, which is kind of a neat touch.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique for its time. I know combining text has become a thing in future RPGs. I don't think you see it that often, but it is a thing.
Yeah.
Like Tales of Arise. Uh, you can
Yes.
combine a text in that one.
Yes, you can.
Um, by the way, we're literally about to fight the final boss. So
Yes. I got to start
the only
working on
thing,
that.
the only side quest we have left is we got to do the fishing to get Kisara's final skills. So
Fishing.
not looking
Gross.
forward to it.
No, the fishing game wasn't too bad in that one. So side deal. Yeah, that is the combat. It's pretty simple, but yet interesting at the same time.
Yep. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other stuff. We already talked about the fair. There's the trial, which was a really cool touch, how you could affect the outcome of the trial based on the actions you took at the fair. Of course, I think most people, if you weren't aware of that, would frick that up pretty bad and not even be aware what was going on. But it is
I
cool the
still,
first time.
yeah, I still stole the sandwich a lot from that guy's food, and I still came out not guilty.
Nice.
So
Rich
don't know
is
how.
more innocent than I, apparently.
Yeah.
And finally, I have a list of bosses here. I don't know if you are there any you want to call out as being memorable or like you had a hard time with or anything. We kind
Nope.
of discussed them as we went through the story. So
Yeah. No, I had no problem with any of them. They were fine. And once you figured out the whole what you needed to do to take them out, you're fine.
yeah, especially in the first half of the game, most of the bosses aren't so much about how strong you are, but whether you can figure out the technique to beat them. It's almost got like a puzzle element to the boss fights. So, like for example, Zombor on the Zenin Bridge has two parts. You have to kind of defeat them close to the same time, or else the other part becomes super strong and will kind of destroy you. Just
Mhm.
stuff like that. Uh, but yeah, I guess that was a short discussion on the gameplay, but the gameplay's pretty simple. I would say the two most unique things about the game are the encountering enemies on the field and probably the dual and triple techs.
Yeah, I think so.
So other than that, it's pretty standard JRPG. And you get the time traveling, which makes exploration unique and interesting. But other than that, okay. Anything else about the gameplay?
No, I think it's time.
Right. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we return, we will get to our ratings. Give our final ratings for Chrono Trigger. Okay, so our categories today are story, combat, non-combat, visuals, audio, overall feel, and of course our bonus category, which does not count towards the final score of rating the final boss. We do have Bill's scores here. He recorded a little clip for each category. Our original plan was for all three of us to be together on this episode, but just the holidays and chicken pox prevented that. So, um, so we'll let you kick things off, Rich. What do you think about the story?
Well, with the time traveling and hopping around and trying to save the world, I thought the story is pretty decent. I'm going to give that an 8. I liked it. It's good
Okay.
times.
Um, it's deceptive, right? Because it's not like a super complex story, but it does have some twists and some reveals. And the time traveling makes it unique, I would say. I'm hovering between a 7 and an 8, but I think I'm going to agree with you and go with an 8 as well. So
Nice.
let's see what Bill had to say about the story.
Hi, my name's Bill, and these are my final rankings for Chrono Trigger. Oh, very dramatic. So, story, yes. This game has a story. No, wait. The story is an interesting one. I'm going to give it a 7, which is probably going to disappoint quite a few people. But although they handle certain aspects of the story well, like time travel, there are also the odd plot hole in that here and there. I didn't at all feel the love that everyone has for Sharla and Magus. I don't know. I didn't kind of feel like the story was as effective as other games from this time period. It was good. It was good, but I don't think it's as good as most people's nostalgia goggles have for it. So I'm going to give it a solid 7. I think it was a good story, but I didn't think it was particularly amazing.
Okay. Well, Bill will be crucified. But I kind of agree with him, though. Like I said, I was hovering between 7 and 8 too. I do think maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia going on with the story.
Yeah.
It's good. It's not Final Fantasy VI, you know.
No.
Okay. Combat. What do you got?
So combat is, I mean, it's a pretty simplistic combat system. I like the text. I like the dual text, the triple text, how the everything moves around and how that affects that. I'm gonna give it an 8. I had no complaints with it. I thought it was pretty good.
Okay. Again, I'm teetering between a 7 and an 8 myself. I think the dual triple text is pretty cool. I think it's cool that you encounter enemies on the field, but the combat itself, there's not too much to write home about. Uh, the one cool thing I would say is, well, the battle system felt really fast to me. Like I had it on the max speed or the slowest speed, and it still felt like you got to put your commands in quick. And even on wait mode, like unless you're actually in a menu, it keeps going. So I guess I appreciate that about it, but it also wasn't extremely difficult. Like it was pretty easy throughout. Uh, I don't know. I'll give it a 8 as well. All right, let's see what Bill had.
Combat. The combat in this game is really, really fun. Like I said, I like the fact that it all kind of happens on the overworld map as you're going through things. I love that aspect of the game. It kind of makes it feel semi-action RPG, and there is a good feel to the combat. There's a good sort of half challenge to it, and as I described before, I only really had trouble with one boss that actually gave me 12 game overs in this game. But other than that, the game was far too easy for me. But it was a very good combat system. I did like it. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
So we all agree on that one.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, what about non-combat?
Listen, I'm not gonna give that a perfect score. I know he did on some stuff. He'll talk about that in a moment, but I don't know. It's just it didn't grab me and go, oh my god, this is crazy. Like I enjoy this non-combat stuff. I'm gonna give it a 9.
It's a tough one because there's not much to it. It's pretty standard fare. I guess I'll give it an 8 because I can't think of anything that was like, oh, the non-combat was awesome because it's just running around
Yeah,
exploring and I don't know.
it didn't get crazy.
Okay,
That's the thing.
yeah. So let's see why Bill likes it so much.
Non combat. To be honest with you, 10 out of 10. This game's solid. Great menu system for what you need it to do. The interactions in the overworld are fantastic. I've got nothing that I can fault for non-combat of this game. Just liked everything. Yeah, the game works really, really well. So I can't fault it at all. 10 out of 10.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Whatever, Bill. Visuals.
10, just straight up 10. I love that art style. I'm seeing a lot of people really getting into the visuals for this stuff now, especially with the 2D HD stuff that's coming out.
Hmm.
So I loved it.
Okay. Um. Hmm. I agree with you. It's one of the best looking Super Nintendo games. I can't think of an area that looks bad. There's some great like background art with the skyboxes. The character sprites are all expressive, and the monster design is really cool in general. I think as well. I can't fault anything. It's also a 10 from me. Let's see if Bill agrees.
Visuals. Now here's an interesting one. I'm going to give this a 6. No, I'm joking. It's a 10 out of 10. This game's gorgeous. Like, there's nothing else I can say about it. I've already spoken about how there's lots of things in this game where Square add their little touches, even just the balloons on the world map coming out in the Millennium Fair. Little touches like that. And then when you get to 12,000 BC and you're on that floating island and the waterfalls are coming down, it's just gorgeous. This game is just gorgeous. So, yeah, solid 10 out of 10.
So we all agree. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
Audio.
I had no complaints. I know you guys are very big on the music and stuff like that, and the sounds. The sounds of the creatures, the attacks, everything was phenomenal. I didn't really care too much about the music, to be honest. I'm not really a music guy, at least in gaming wise. I'm gonna give it a 7. I had no complaints about it. I thought it was good.
Okay. I'll give it an 8. I think in general the soundtrack is really good. There are some parts of it that I don't like most of the music in the future area. Don't care for. And I think one problem with the people that don't like this game's soundtrack is a problem a lot of games today have, is that it may have a great soundtrack, but maybe the songs that either you don't hear it very often or the songs that you hear the most are not the good songs. So, for example, what's the track you hear most often in this game? The battle theme, right?
Yes.
I think the battle theme's pretty weak.
Yeah.
One of the worst
true.
tracks. There are some great tracks, but that's the one you hear the most in it. Yeah. So I'm gonna give it an 8. If it had some better battle themes, I would probably go for a 9. And then also, I like the sounds in general too, like the monster screams, and then like Lavos' scream is like bone curdling almost, and you hear that one quite often. So yeah. All right, let's see what Bill got.
Audio. Difficult one for me. It's a very, very good soundtrack. I will say that. The soundtrack is like a 9, 10 out of 10 all day long. But what lets this game down, and this isn't me just being a dick towards Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger. I've marked other games down on this before. I've played other games where the soundtrack overall has been very, very good, but for 99% of the game, you're only listening to the one battle theme. And I kind of feel like it's one of the weaker points of the game, is that battle theme. And it's one of the tracks you have to listen to most. So yes, there is a lot of good music in this game, but it's overshadowed by the fact that you don't get to listen to a lot of it a lot of the time. So unfortunately, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. That's not a low marking, but it's got to come down a little bit.
It's like he read my mind. That's what I said.
Like you guys share one brain.
Oh no.
That's scary.
Yeah. Okay. So finally, overall feel.
I love the game. I do. It is by far one of the better games of RPGs that we play. It definitely shows the influence it has over the time, especially the RPGs we play now and whatnot. We kind of hold standard. Is it the best RPG of all time? But I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I still think it's great.
Okay. I'll give it a 9. I was teetering between an 8, and if I could give it an 8.5, that's what I would probably do. But I liked this game a lot more on replay than I did the first time I played through it, and I kind of understand a little bit more why the game is held in such high regard now, because I really did enjoy my run this time. So I think it's really close to being one of the best RPGs ever. I think calling it the best RPG ever is going a little far, but I don't think it's that far from that mark. So, yeah, I'll give it a 9. All right, what does Bill say?
Finally, overall feel, this game's great. I'm not going to lie about it. It's a very, very good game. I enjoyed it. I've given my quips about it, and I've often given this game a bit of a a bit of a rub in the nose on Discord and telling people how much I'm not that particularly big a fan. But this game was great. I only have a problem with kind of the middle. No, not even the middle section. The opening section is very, very strong up until you go into the future, and then from the future until you reach 12,000 BC. It's the middle slog of a game. All games have it, but I've always struggled to get through that section in the past. And even this time round, I was playing that bit, and I kind of felt like I was having to force myself through it again because I just found it all a bit boring and contrived. But after you hit 12,000 BC, the game really picks up pace and really gets its teeth into you, and it leaves you with a very good taste in your mouth. Apart from never knowing what the entity is, or really having a good explanation of what Lavos is. But overall, 9 out of 10 for me.
All right. And then our bonus category, which again does not count towards the final score, final boss. What did you think?
I mean, he was a bitch to kill. We're talking the pods, right? Those things, the final form.
I mean, I would count like the entire. Well, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
I mean, I love the overall look of Lavos at the very beginning, and then you get to the Dragon Ball Z mashup one was pretty good. But we're talking about the pod guy. He was a bitch. Long fight for sure. If you're not prepared, if you don't know what you're doing, obviously he's going to kick your ass. I give it a 7.
Okay.
I didn't mind it.
I initially put an 8 because I was thinking of the entire sequence. The first 2 phases of Lavos, and then the third form, and then the final form that we're actually rating. And then I went down to a 7 once I realized, oh wait, we only count the final boss, that final. And it's kind of weird. Like, it's a weird design. It's not intimidating like every other form of Lavos you fought. I like the mechanics of it, where you have to defeat other parts to weaken the real, true core part, whatever. But other than that, it's like it could have been better.
Yep.
So I give it a 7. And Bill says,
And the final boss, I didn't like the final boss. I didn't like that. I just didn't like the bit where he kind of had his transitions through the various bosses that you fought up till that point. That wasn't very exciting for me, if I'm honest. It was just like, oh, going through all this again. And especially like the first ones, they didn't buff them at all, so you just one shot every single part of the boss. I mean, like some of the earlier bosses were some of the more fun boss fights. So yeah, I didn't really like that aspect. I liked it when it turned into Lord Freezer's dad, Cooler. That was quite fun. But again, at this point, it was too easy to beat him. I just Falcon striked him to death. And then the final boss fight was a bit more interesting. I found the boss when you was fighting the Empress lady. Name's gone from my head for a moment. But that fight I thought was probably one of the more fun fights in the game, but not particularly. I'm going to give the overall boss a 5 out of 10. It wasn't particularly exciting or challenging, so I'm going to mark it down. And yeah, it's a big thing for me. Final boss fights, I want them to be a nice challenge. That's what it is for me.
which is really hard to do in RPGs because it's so easy to get OP. Can you imagine how long? I mean, it's already a super long final boss fight if you count all the forms.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how long it would have taken if they had buffed like that first phase where it adapts each boss?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Pass.
But all right. So our scores are set in stone. Rich, do you want to read yours?
Yeah. So I gave story an 8, combat an 8, non-combat a 9, visuals 10, audio 7, overall feel an 8, the non-categorized or non-affecting score final boss a 7, which gave my totals 50 out of 60 and an 83%.
Which, spoiler alert, is the lowest of the three of us, but
Thank
not
you.
by much. My scores: I gave story an 8, combat an 8, non-combat an 8, visuals a 10, audio an 8, overall feel a 9, final boss a 7, which brought my subtotal to a 51 out of 60, or an 85%. As for Bill, he gave story a 7, combat an 8, non-combat a 10, visuals a 10, audio an 8, overall feel a 9, final boss a 5, which brought his subtotal to a 52 out of 60. So all three of us were within 3 points of each other as far as our final score. And his total is 87%. And so that brings the final official score from the RPG After Years to be an 85%. I think that's a pretty good score. That's pretty close to how I feel about the game, I think. I think a lot of listeners might be disappointed about that. Those that, subscribe to the belief that Chrono Trigger is the best RPG of all time. But
Sorry.
it's a really good game, guys. It's just not perfect. IMO.
That's why we rate these things, and we have 3 people that give our feedback.
Right. So, looking at our master list, that makes Chrono Trigger tied for 12th place for every game we've ever rated, which it's tied with the Marvel Spider-Man, The City That Never Sleeps DLC, and East Book 1 and 2. That puts it right above Alundra, which scored an 84, and right below Life is Strange 2 at an 87, or if you want to count just the RPGs, that would be Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Nice.
I'll just read off really quickly the other games that are above Chrono Trigger on our list: Final Fantasy VII Remake, Last of Us 2, Persona 5 Royal, Marvel Spider-Man, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Celeste, Fantasy Star 2, Miles Morales, Life is Strange 2, Spider-Man DLC. Yeah, well, actually, that one's tied. So, I think I agree with most of that, having played most of those.
Yeah.
As far as the RPG scale goes, it scored a 260. That's how much of an RPG Chrono Trigger is. Out of 100 is what you need to be considered an RPG by this show. That puts it lower than Final Fantasy II, which scored a 270, but higher than Pokemon Sword and Shield, which scored a 255.
Damn.
So yeah. Okay, moving on to our listener feedback. What do we got here, Rich?
So, thank you all who submitted the feedback. Frost states that it's a fabulous game. I'm glad I got to revisit it with the club. Its biggest strength is its characters and how it manages to be one of the only games that gets time travel right, or at least as right as you can do it. Along the way, you learn a lot about characters, which goes a long way in driving engagement, even when the actual plot suffers. Side quests only served as amplify this, probably the best side quest I've experienced. The music and visuals are, well, it's a Square game, so they're great. The gameplay and equipment systems, while repetitive in the game, when it's best to spam a single combo, has tons of options to explore in mid-late game. FF6 is still the king of an SNES RPGs, and I enjoy Secret of Mana more, but this ranks third for me in a very competitive field of SNES RPGs. I mean, obviously, if you rate those two, this is going to be the third. So, I see what you did there.
I like it way, way more than Secret of Mana.
I feel you there.
But I agree with most everything else he said there.
Yep.
ROB says, well, we did it. We completed the GOAT of RPGs. It's always a great time to play this game. The story is a 10 out of 10, side quests are great and add to the immersive world you just fall in love with. Love all the characters and NPCs. It's fun to see the future, 1000 AD, change as you make choices in the past, in 600 AD. The graphics are some top SNES graphics, up there with FF6, and I love the diverse backgrounds and time periods you travel through. I admit the prehistoric era has some areas that can get confusing, and the Kingdom of Zeal comes off as a little geometrically perfect at times, which I find annoying. It's an interesting criticism.
Mm.
The music is about 95% perfect. There are a few tracks that are more meh, and you hear a few too many times. Magus Castle is a wonderful dungeon, and I love that just about every boss has a different mechanic, so if you're not super grinding away, you can't just plow through with attacks. I love that battles take place right where you're standing, and you don't have to time travel to a battle screen. The multiple endings add for replayability, as does the New Game Plus, and some of them are just good old-fashioned fun. Overall, this game is as close to perfect as you will get in an RPG and should be played by everyone. Well, I agree with most of what he said, other than it being the GOAT.
Yeah. All right, so JS. Really enjoyed playing this game again. This was the first time I played it all the way to the end since my original run in the 90s. The SNES era of RPGs were such a wonderful golden age for the genre when it's titles like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI representing the pinnacle of the 2D pixel art in RPGs. I spent more time grinding this run through because I learned about where to grind AP, and as a result, this run ended up way easier than I remembered, especially the battle with Lavos. Overall, the game was kind of short and fairly easy, but it packs a whimsical, delightful story into a 24-hour or 25 hours and manages to time travel plot as mechanic very well. This game feels what the SNES Dragon Quest should have been. I never played those.
I think I would need to replay FF6 to decide whether or not I like it better than Chrono Trigger. It's hard. I kind of suspect that I might like Chrono Trigger more now if I were to replay 6, but who knows?
Ooh.
Finally, we got the lovely Disa. She says, "It was fun revisiting Chrono Trigger again. It's a very good game, which I feel suffers from two things that always leaves me feeling it just needed a tiny bit more. I would have wished for a good battle theme and a few more pretty areas. The dungeons aren't pretty at all, at least to my eyes." That's interesting. I think
Yeah.
there's some drab looking dungeons, but there are some really cool looking ones too, so I don't know that I agree with her there. She goes on to say, "That's what keeps it from being truly a masterpiece in my eyes, and I think of it every time I play it because the beginning hours hold so much promise of wonder. But taken as any other game and not something that has to live up to a best game ever created, it's absolutely a good game with a lot to offer. Definitely an enjoyable replay and club game." So
Nice.
Disa's a little bit more negative than most, even though she does say she really likes it. But that's interesting. Final thoughts on Chrono Trigger.
I'm glad we did it. It's done. It's in the books of the RPG After Years. We're gonna play it again. It's done.
Yep. I know I was bitching a lot when it won the nomination in voting, but I
I
am
mean,
also glad to
you
have
bitched a
replayed
little
it.
bit,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah. Like I even thought about not playing at all. So I'm really glad that I did.
Me
It's a
too.
good game. Maybe not the GOAT, but great game. Okay. That wraps up the Chrono Trigger review. I'm going to close this club for the final time, and then we will hit our outro. That was one of the tracks that apparently came to Mitsuda in a dream. So,
Weird.
but yeah, that's it for the Chrono Trigger review. Another RPG Club is in the books. As for next week, which will be in 2 weeks from this recording, we're going to be doing another catch up and news episode. There's lots to talk about. The Breath of the Wild delay, the PlayStation Plus tier system revealed, and of course, Kingdom Hearts 4 was revealed just hours before, not even hours before we started recording this episode. So we're going to have lots to catch up on.
Crazy. So the next is the RPG Club, like we talked about briefly at the beginning of the episode. The RPG Club is a book club series that we do on RPGs that is voted on and nominated by our community. The current game is nothing. We don't have a checkpoint, and the due date is nothing yet. So we shall see here soon. Scott, what do you have about the next thing?
So again, when this episode comes out, we will know what the next RPG Club game is. But Rich and I have no clue because voting hasn't even started for us at this time of recording. So, future editor Scott, take it away. Wow, I can't believe that game won.
I'm so blown away.
So yeah, the club will begin on Sunday, May 1st. That should give everybody plenty of time to figure out or to acquire the game. Moving into our plugs.
So rate and review us on any of your podcasting services, such as Apple iTunes, Google Reviews. Spotify even has a rating system. Remember, on the Spotify, you have to actually listen to a couple episodes before you can actually review us with their star system. So please do that. It helps us get more noticed.
We would appreciate it. Another way to help the show is to join our Patreon. We got lots of great benefits. You get early access to the episodes. The episodes are ad-free on our Patreon feed. You also get access to a backlog of extra reviews that we did back in the day. There is RPG Club. You get access to nominating and voting, participating in all that, to deciding what the next RPG Club game is, and much more. You can check all that out over at patreon.com/RPG Afteryears.
So, speaking of a few things that we do, is including Twitch. We do stream the show every day, usually, or every time we do on Sundays, usually at 9 a.m. Eastern at twitch.tv /RPG Afteryears. Come check out some of our streams. We do a lot of other ones. And if you can't get enough of Scott, you can find him at his channel, which is where, Scott?
I'm so embarrassed. That's at twitch.tv/the Scott Spot. That's the_Scott_spot. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, I'm usually in the chats on his streams. I'm never on his streams because I don't stream. I tried.
I would say that you could catch me streaming the alternate endings of Chrono Trigger, but by the time you're listening to this, I'm probably done with Chrono Trigger. Yes. But there's lots of other great RPGs. Check that out. Depending on what wins the RPG Club, I may be streaming that game, so we'll see. You can email us, rpgafteryears@gmail.com.
Discord is a great place for you to join the conversation. That is where we talk about the current club game and various other series that we go over. Probably the Kingdom Hearts 4 announcement that is now popping. So come join us.
You can find us on Twitter. The show is at RPGYears, and you can find me at the Scott Spot.
You can find me at HailBlue1569.
And Bill is at Matunica. That's METUNNICA. And that's going to be it for episode 108. Join us next week for episode 109, in which we will cover our thoughts on all that random RPG news. Hopefully they give us a good glimpse at KH4. I haven't watched it yet. Until then, we're off to chase some cats through time. I'm Scott.
And I'm Rich.
And thank you for listening to the RPG Afteryears. Bye.
Bye.
The beast has been slain. The world has been saved. Our heroes are basking in the after years. They rest in the tavern for all to hear their tale of victory and conquered fears. Revel in the peace that reigns through the land. All will know it was by our heroes' hands. Here in the after years. Here in the RPG after years. Here in the RPG after years.